The clock on the wall struck midnight. Outside, the quiet suburban street was swallowed in shadows, the faint glow of distant street lamps casting long, trembling silhouettes. Inside a modest house at the end of the block, Mark sat alone, his eyes heavy with fatigue as he flipped through an old book. The only sound was the occasional creak of the wooden floor and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed through the silent house, 3 slow, deliberate knocks at the front door. Mark's heart skipped a beat. Who could possibly be out at this hour? He hesitated, the shadows in the hallway suddenly feeling thicker, colder. Swallowing his unease, Mark approached the door. He peered through the peephole but saw nothing. With a trembling hand, he turned the knob and cracked the door open. Standing there were 2 children. Pale as porcelain, their clothes damp and worn. But it was their eyes that rooted Mark to the spot, completely black, glossy, reflecting no light, like bottomless voids. They said nothing at first, their faces blank and unsettling. "Can we come in?" The smaller one's voice was soft, almost too quiet, but firm. It carried a strange, unnatural tone, empty, yet commanding. Mark stepped back, shaking his head. "No. It's late. You should go home." The children exchanged a glance, unblinking. "Please," the taller one said, voice just as hollow. "We need to come inside." A chill ran down Mark's spine. Closing the door, he locked it quickly, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the still night. But the silence that followed was not peaceful. Outside, the wind howled, and strange scratching noises scratched against the walls. Mark's eyes darted nervously to every dark corner. His mind raced, had they really been children? Or something else entirely? The next days blurred into uneasy nights. Doors creaked open by themselves. Shadows flickered in the corners of his vision. The black-eyed children's knock haunted his dreams. Mark felt eyes watching him, waiting, lurking just beyond the safety of his home. And he knew, if they ever came back, he might not be able to refuse again. The rain pounded relentlessly against the windows, a steady drumbeat in the darkened house. Thunder rumbled low, shaking the walls and rattling the roof. Sarah and her family huddled in the living room, wrapped in blankets, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows on the walls. Suddenly, a sharp, desperate scratching came at the back door. Sarah's husband, Tom, frowned. "Who could be out in this storm?" he muttered, rising to check. As Tom approached the door, the scratching turned to soft knocks, quick, insistent. Through the rain-streaked glass, 2 small figures appeared, soaked to the bone. Their clothes clung to their pale skin, but what froze Tom's blood was their eyes, entirely black, shining like obsidian in the dim light. Sarah's voice trembled as she said, "Don't let them in." But Tom, unsure if he was imagining things, unlocked the door and opened it a crack. The children stepped inside without hesitation, their silence unsettling. Minutes passed in thick tension. The children said nothing, simply staring with those abyssal eyes. Then, the lights flickered and went out. The house was swallowed by darkness, except for the faint glow of the storm outside. Suddenly, Tom felt a cold breath on his neck. The children were closer than before. "Please," the smaller child whispered, voice hollow and eerie. "Let us stay." Sarah's heart pounded. She grabbed Tom's arm, pulling him back toward the living room. But the children followed, gliding silently through the shadows. As the storm raged, strange things began, objects moved on their own, whispers echoed through empty rooms, and an oppressive heaviness filled the air. By dawn, the black-eyed children had vanished, leaving the family shaken, their home forever changed. Something dark had slipped in with the storm, and it wasn't leaving any time soon. It was a quiet night when Emma's phone suddenly buzzed, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. She frowned, answering hesitantly. A child's voice whispered, trembling and weak, "Please, help me." Emma's heart raced. "Who is this? Where are you?" she asked. No reply, just silence, then a faint shuffling sound. The line went dead. Moments later, a soft knocking came at her front door. Peering through the peephole, she saw two children standing there. Their skin was unnaturally pale, and their eyes, entirely black, like dark pools absorbing every speck of light, held her frozen in place. "Can we come inside?" the smaller one said in a hollow, eerie voice. Emma's breath caught. "No. I don't know who you are." The children said nothing more, just stood silently, their gaze never wavering. When she closed the door and locked it, Emma's relief was brief. That night, strange things began to happen. The lights flickered, shadows danced on the walls, and a whisper seemed to echo from the corners of the house. Emma's phone rang again, another child's voice pleading for help, growing more desperate with each call. Days passed, and Emma grew more exhausted, drained, as if the black-eyed children were feeding off her fear. Each midnight knock was a reminder she was not alone. One night, she dared to look through the window and saw them standing outside, motionless and silent, waiting for their invitation. Emma realized too late, the black-eyed children weren't asking for help. They were demanding to come in. And if she let them, she feared she might never be free again. It was the kind of dare that teenagers love: spend the night in the old, abandoned house at the edge of town. Rumors said it was haunted, that strange children with black eyes roamed its halls after dark. 5 friends decided to find out for themselves. The sun had barely set when they arrived, their flashlights barely piercing the thick fog that clung to the cracked windows. Inside, dust hung heavy in the stale air. The floorboards groaned under their weight as they explored, laughter masking nervous glances. Then, just as the clock neared midnight, a faint knock echoed from the front door, 3 slow, deliberate knocks. They froze. A chill swept through the room, and 2 small figures appeared in the shadows, pale children, faces expressionless, eyes completely black and empty. "Can we come in?" the smaller one asked, voice soft and hollow. The friends hesitated, unsure whether to run or stay. Against their better judgment, they allowed the children inside. The night grew colder, the air heavier. Strange whispers filled the hallways. One by one, the teens began to disappear without a trace, their flashlights left abandoned on the floor. Desperate messages were found scrawled in dust on the walls: "Don't open the door. They watch from the dark. We're next." Only one friend remained by dawn, eyes wide with terror, refusing to speak about what had happened. The black-eyed children vanished with the dawn, but the house still waits, silent, hungry, and ready for the next visitors. David had always been fascinated by folklore. When he stumbled upon an old, dusty diary in the back of a forgotten bookstore, he felt a thrill. The diary spoke of a dark curse, children with black eyes who appeared at midnight, seeking entry to claim souls. At first, David thought it was just a myth. But on the very night he read the diary, a knock echoed at his door exactly at midnight. He opened it to find 2 pale children standing silently, their eyes completely black, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Please," one whispered. "Let us in." David hesitated but slammed the door shut. Yet, the knocks continued every night, growing louder and more desperate. Strange things began to happen: objects moved on their own, chilling whispers filled the air, and shadows flickered just beyond sight. David felt a cold presence constantly watching him. Sleep became impossible. He feared the curse was real, and that it had marked him. One night, the children appeared inside his house, their void-like eyes piercing into his soul. He realized the curse wasn't just a story, it was a trap. If he opened the door, he would lose himself forever. Now, trapped between fear and despair, David fights to keep the darkness out. But the curse of the black-eyed children waits patiently, knowing eventually, no one can resist forever.